businesses from timeless business practices that we know, and brings them and trains management and ownership teams. Her passion and excitement is around efficiency, effective systems, implementation, foresight, and most importantly, communication. Ingrid, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jess.
Such
an honor.
It's fun to be in person too.
Yes.
I enjoy having this type of a setup whenever possible. And we don't get to have that very often at a live show for the Voice of Bold Business Radio. So I'm really glad that you are willing to make the drive over.
Thank you. Well, it's a beautiful town to always come and visit, and just having as much time with you, I'm always going to embody and embrace that.
That's how I feel too. That's how I feel too. Oh, so we're talking about effective systems today, which this is program 218, effective systems. And there are so many elements of that, but I want to know first, before we dive in, what got you really excited? Were you born loving systems?
That's a great question. Well, let's put it this way. I have 3 older brothers, and they are all engineers. Okay. So I think it kind of felt in along with that as I was growing up. And, I think we're all programmed certain ways, and I love figuring out the whys and the what fors and the hows. And especially even being in the veterinary world, it is a truly researching what's going on and determining a set standard of what's going to work. But it still has that flexibility, especially in the practice of medicine, that things are not always like we expect them to be. We anticipate, we do all kinds of plans, but it doesn't always help. And as I think we'll talk about later on, that even though we may have systems that are tried and true, there's some things that we need to be able to adjust.
Oh, are you saying change?
Yes. The nasty 5-letter word.
Nice.
6. Learn to check out.
Systems and counting, not always equal. No, totally different skill sets. That's what I think. I would have just said that nasty C word. I wouldn't have even attempted to count.
It's a lovely word. And when I'm working with people, and even when by the time we get through that, actually come to embrace that, enjoy change, and recognizing the opportunities that come with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So important. So when you're thinking, okay, so somebody comes around and they're like, okay, we have a problem, but we don't want to change. You want to help us. How do you start that conversation? Do you go in the back door? Do you go in the side door? Do you take them on a journey?
So usually working with I think you've done the same experience. This is always about exploration, discovery. So what are the issues at hand? Is it all as you expect? Are you getting the results that you want? Why are we talking in the first place? And a lot of times when we go and delve into the deeper issues, we find that the concern or the problem is really not what they're coming to us for. It goes much, much further and much deeper, oftentimes into where we were talking about values earlier. It comes into the values. So for example, my core values are communication. That's the first one. And is the communication happening so that everybody knows what's going on? And even in the discovery phase, that open communication is so important to learn what are everyone's values, what are everyone's strengths, what are everyone's concerns, and are we all on the same page? So just getting that ground level, what are we here for? And it does not take long before that conversation starts coming into place, that people realize the way we're doing this right now isn't seeming to work. So something has to change.
That's right. Well, they could choose to stay the same, right? I mean, it doesn't have to. There's 2 choices. There's move forward or stay put.
Exactly. And oftentimes when we have a team working on it, that needs to be established right set up front. Are you willing to move on this bandwagon with us or not? And so getting a team together, making sure everyone is on that collaborative phase, and are we all on the same team? And sometimes there's a little hard conversations to have on the onset.
I think there's hard conversations to have throughout.
You're right. You're right.
I mean, I suppose we could start at the starting line.
Yes. But a lot of people, it's interesting to see how many of of whether it be a solopreneur or an author or a business team, that is it, how much do you want this? Are you willing to give it all to get to that end line, which will always be moving forward too? But how much are you willing to give? How much are you willing to reassess what's important to you and what's important to those that you're wanting to serve. That's really what it's ultimately about.
So how often in your experience, do people think they know what they want, but they really don't?
I'd say almost
All of them.
100%, almost 100%. It's
Bec-
the rare case.
Yeah, that somebody really knows.
Right.
Yeah. And I think so. That's my experience too. That's why I was
Mhm.
like, oh, maybe I'm not asking the right questions at the beginning, because even me sometimes,
Yeah,
if I'm sitting down to solve a problem,
Mhm.
or I'm coming up or evaluating something new for Red Direction, what I do is I sit and I figure out, am I asking the right questions? And I think I might be, but if I don't get the results I want, I recognize I'm not. And sometimes I'm good at it, and sometimes I'm not.
Well, I think we're all good at it. It's just a matter of perspective.
Sure. Okay.
Right?
Keep going.
That's where it's important to have that outside perspective. So even as, for example, coaches or consultants ourselves, or even someone that is in the professional field, we all still go to these continuing education seminars and conventions. Why? It's to improve ourselves. It's to give ourselves more knowledge. So when we're so focused, and we sometimes even have the blinders on, it may not be intentional, but we're so hell-bent on being where we are that we forget about what are the other options.
Right.
We forget, and we get on this path that seems to be kind of a well-beaten path.
Mm-hmm.
And we forget that sometimes we want to stray just a little bit and see where we go, because even that tiny degree of change can find you in a completely different result.
Oh, I'm telling you, it's the truth every single time, every single
Mhm.
time. So what are the elements of a good system?
Well, I think actually first we have to define what is a system, right?
Why not? Let's do that. I'm jumping ahead. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to define what is a system, and I feel that a system is a set of tasks or a set of to-dos or a set of circumstances that are all built upon themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If this, then that.
Yeah.
When X, then Y. And this is something that a system can be as simple as when we're driving on the road, for example, right? We all accept here in the US, we drive on the right side of this road, and we trust that those that are driving on the other direction, that they're going to be on the other side. Now, what if that system wasn't happening, right? So there's a component of trust that we all have to follow it. But the real big issue of developing a system that is successful, there are really three components. First of all, it has to be reasonable. Is it doable? Is it realistic? Is it something that can really happen and that everyone can follow through with and understand and how to do? The next step, is it repeatable? If it's something that is only happenstance. So for example, if we've got in a computer program world, we know the bits and the bytes, it's on, it's off. It's going to go one step after another. If the program is messed up, if we fix that little diagram within the computer programming, it will continue to follow the same path every single time. If we know when a client is calling you or coming up to a storefront that they're going to have the very same reception each time, and they understand first they're going to check in, then they're going to get this form to fill out, and then they're going to see this, or they're going to receive this massage or so, and then when they leave, then this is another system. So that repeatability is key and paramount, built on a successful system. And then the last thing is it going to be relayable? So can you relay it to someone else? Is it recordable? Can you record it? And you should be recording it, because when the next person comes in, are they going to learn the same path? Are they going to learn the same system? Are they going to do the same thing? Because part of the definition of a system is with the intent of achieving a particular goal. The intention may be there, but if the system doesn't get you to that end goal, then it's not a reliable system. And that's where we face a lot of the failures, where we may have employees that get disgruntled. They do make errors. We have clients that complain, or they're not receiving the service that they expect and that they deserve. It's because these things are not reliable to train everyone there. So the three components really are: it needs to be reasonable or realistic. It needs to be repeatable. And lastly, it needs to be recordable
Mhm.
so that it can continue onwards.
I'm listening to you and I'm like, oh, what was bubbling up for me is, okay, so we have these systems and we're using them and we're falling short. And we blame the system. And so we change the system and we still fall short. And, one of the things that I am recognizing right here is this is the time, hold up a mirror. Hey, maybe it's not the system, maybe it's the leadership.
Right.
Because there's an interplay. There's an interplay between a system and the people that are running the system. A system and the intent, as you said, that's subjective. So are we all on the same page? Going back to your first value, communication. How do we do that? Are we working well together? Because the system may be just fine and we may be the part that's broken. So that's a little hard to admit.
It is hard.
I mean, if you think about it, somebody's invested in that.
Absolutely.
Somebody put a lot of time to make that system happen.
Yep.
But what?
Yeah, think about the pilot system, right?
Yeah.
They have their checks and balances that they have to follow through. You hand that system to me, I know nothing about flying a plane.
Right.
It's going to fall short, just like you're pointing out. The system may be perfect. Yet on the other hand, you may have a very exemplary setup, if this, then that, and it works perfectly and is designed to make the most efficient use of time, of resources, and provide the most utmost experience. If not everyone's on board and they don't get it, then how is it going to really get the result that is intended?
Yeah, exactly. There's some thinking at the beginning that occurs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of consideration and contemplation that occurs.
Yeah. And development and research.
Yes.
And it may be personnel research and allocating what's everyone best at.
Yeah.
How many times do we go in and we find that the person that has the best connection with people is stuck in the back? And you've got this, hi, how are you, in the front, right?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And are we willing to question? And it's interesting to consider looking at ourselves, because I talk about that all the time, Ingrid. I'm like, let's hold up that mirror. What can we see today? What are we willing to see today? And the only way we can do that is when we practice it.
True.
And that's, I think, the biggest part is, do we practice thinking? Do we practice contemplation in regards to our set of goals, our set of objectives for our department, for our role, for our team, for our company, whatever role we're in, right?
Right.
And I'm gonna come back to communication for a minute because it's so paramount here. And I'm hearing how important it is from what you're saying, that we need that communication. So how do you have a suggestion or a tip or an example of a time where all it took was a word change? You know what I mean? Like a word change, like we ended up wearing two wrong left shoes and we really needed a left shoe and a right shoe.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
And everything, wow.
It's about listening.
Yeah.
Is really what it is about. Yeah. We'll go through a scenario where one person is set on getting, let's say they want to design a marketing piece. They've been working on it. They've been working on this marketing piece, and it's just not clicking, right? So you got the other person that suddenly comes in, and it's that one shift of the word. You've seen that video, and it actually came from who was it that originally did this? It was a marketing long ago, but they redid a video on it where there's the blind man on the counter or in front of the street. And it was one change of word. Originally, he said, "I'm blind, please help." And the change in wording then turned into, "It's a beautiful day and I can't see it." And the difference in how much he was then gaining, and people were emotionally connected. This is the wordage. Yeah, it's huge. Absolutely huge.
And I know Scott, I'm going to totally bring you into this, Scott. He talks about you've got a receiver and a transmitter. And I think he says there's a third thing, but that is eluding me. And so if he finds it very important, he will interject. If not, I've got it enough for where I'm at right now. And so as much listening to make sure what's happening, recognizing that the consideration of the words to be chosen, and if we're not getting the result, which one are we not doing? We have 2 levers to play with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even as we're
Right.
chatting right now, we originally had a kind of a list of some of the things we knew would be important to cover. Are we going to go through that? If in my head, if I were to think of those items and have, okay, wait, we haven't addressed question number 3 or question 5, I'm not sitting and listening to what you're saying. For example, we weren't going to talk about change.
We were
Really?
not.
We not. And this turned into such a good example about
Yes.
how change, whether from within ourselves, and now it switched over to communication and how they're the components of communication of the giver, the receiver, of both sides, and listening. And that's what communication is based on. You may find that one person, we were using this example earlier, one person wants to get things done as quickly as possible and to be efficient and such, yet the second individual is focused on providing a higher level of detail and assuring that there are no errors and double checks. So this efficiency model of fast and double checking is not going to jive with these 2 individuals. How do you develop a system that will accommodate both? Well, in this circumstance, well, let's do a checks and balances, like with the airline example. So let's make sure that there's a very simple list of, okay, lights work, wheels work, the safety button is on, this button is on again. Those are very quick systems and they're thorough. And now you've combined 2 different personality strengths into a very effective system.
Ooh, and when we talk about empowerment, I'd put the 2 of them at the table together.
Yes.
And say, what is the system that gets us thorough and complete on time?
Yep. And that's
How
where
do
the
we do
giving
that?
and receiving
Yeah.
has to happen. If one person, there's a beautiful example that I just read. Have you ever heard the book To Sell is Human?
No.
Oh,
Okay.
Daniel Pink, fantastic book.
I've got some of his books, but
But To Sell is Human is a fantastic book. And in it, he gives one example of when we're having a communication with someone, instead of saying no, but, or just but,
right,
replace it with yes, and. The tone is completely reversed. There is no rebuttal or shutting off. By simply saying yes, I'm already acknowledging what you're saying. Whether or not I agree with it is not the point. I'm acknowledging what you're saying. And by saying and, I am adding to the value of what you've said. Plus, I'm forcing my mind to use your perspective and either mold it or add to it in a positive, optimistic fashion. It's a beautiful exercise that again, in this book, it mentions it, but it's a beautiful exercise that will bring 2 individuals to a common ground.
I find it fascinating because this works when we're calm. But just like at home, just like in any relationship, there's stress, there's triggers, right? There's friction. There's roadblocks that we just want to blow up and move on. But we're not allowed to do that. We can't do that. It's not the right place. There's something else that's jamming up the works. When we find ourselves in those situations and the tools that we're using that are positive, that are reflective, that are engaging, and that's not working, right? We need a little bit more than WD-40 here.
Right.
How have you seen, how do you like infuse a change agent? That's what I'm going to call it. It may not be the right word, but how do you infuse a change agent, or how have you seen a change agent work and not like a person change agent, but that thing that just goes and basically makes the system reset
goals.
Always
Where does everybody
goal.
want to go? It's the vision. What is the ultimate vision? Where is the common ground? Example, I was working with a chiropractic office, and it was one of the most inefficient offices that I've experienced. Yes, they were seeing their patients, but they were always harried and they were busy, and the clients were leaving without scheduling appointments to come back. There was argument amongst the staff as to who was doing the social media, who was doing the billing, and who was rooming, and who would follow up with the client, and who did the doctor offer the full gamut group package, and then people were slipping through, they were being offered twice. So it was in that circumstance, it was like, okay, we want to have a marketing plan. They wanted to have a marketing plan. And that was the whole initial night is let's get a marketing plan put together. As the group had a conversation, we pulled it back and we said, okay, stop. One of my first of the 3 phases in any business growth, stop.
Yeah.
Where are you at right now? What do you have? And then we just outlined the facts of what I was just describing. And they actually came up with these issues. And those were facts.
Yeah.
And there's no emotion. It's just the emotion started coming, but it was like, let's go and name the facts. Then we pulled it back to, we set that all aside. And I asked them, so what is your mission statement? What is your vision? Silence. Took a while. We took out an old mission statement that they had.
Yeah.
We ended the session at that time. And when we reconvened, the assignment was they were each to look at the mission statement and create a vision in their own words. So when we came back, they had actually already combined, they were ahead of the game. They had already gotten together and created a new mission statement that met all of their interests. Now they were on the same page. Then go back to all the shenanigans we were talking of this and that and such. We started taking which ones fit with the mission statement. And suddenly much of the hubbub fell aside and they recognized we don't even need to be doing this. We don't even have any place for selling a particular product. It makes no sense because it doesn't meet with the mission statement. So it helped to align them and take out some of the emotion. Now we could sit down and establish more consistent systems. Whose strength is meeting with the clients? Who's faster at the computer system? Who has a better, who makes sense to have this conversation with the patient so that they get ultimately a healthy body and are back to the lifestyle that they actually wanted to have. And the tension levels just dropped. That's what a system can do when you go back, like you said.
Exactly.
Opening the doors.
The floodgates, beware. Yay! And with that, Scott, I want to check in. How are things happening around hashtag VBB Radio and radio at Red Direction? Do we have audience that wants to participate?
Yes, we have a question from Myra.
Okay.
Related through Eva. And Myra's question is, what is the role of data analysis in defining and forming the right business system?
We love you, Myra.
Totally.
I got that in before she started. Go for it, Ingrid.
Well, I touched on facts, right? So one of the basis of any vision is to set the benchmarks of where you are now. Otherwise, you don't know where change has occurred. And some of the things might be a little more difficult to assess true data analysis, but if you go through some of the core values of, okay, what are your revenues? What are your expenses? What are your, and your revenues, break that down into not just what are the company revenues as a whole, breaking it down to the specific revenue centers. Example, in the chiropractic office I just mentioned, just since we know that story, the revenue center from a long-term patient package, the revenue center of the products that they were, the self-massaging products that they were providing, and then the revenue center that they were getting from, let's say, online. So breaking down the accounts within your gross revenues into small specifics, because now you can assess, gosh, we're not making so much in the products line as we should, or as we could, or as we would like to. So let's focus our efforts into expanding that component. In the data is then in that's pretty obvious. Now, some of the other data is like, well, how do we measure staff loyalty? How do we measure client experience? Well, those then you sometimes will have to develop new criteria points. If you have a client walking through, let's just say you have a salon, and someone walks through and they have come in for a hairstyle and a haircut. How many of those clients are also adding up to hand massages?
Mm-hmm.
How many of those clients are interested in having a second appointment performed? Even creating surveys on the way out.
Mm-hmm.
And we experience this all the time when we're making phone calls, right? They have,
Yeah.
if you please hang on after this call and you will have a 2-minute survey or 1-minute survey, right?
Yeah.
Those are measurements, 1-star, 5-star, that you can establish right from the get-go. And having the data points to prove your success. This is where we are now. Set a specific date for when you want to hit a certain goal mark in that benchmark. Where are you at? What worked? What didn't work? How do you adjust it? And then keep continuing to move further with additional benchmarks. You've got to have a path of where you want to go. Otherwise, you don't know where you're going.
Truth. And sometimes you just decide where you're going to go and make sure you're on the right path that you go along. And the reason I bring that up is because you said all of that and I was like, oh, that's so complicated. And it's not complicated. We do that.
Yeah.
That's what we teach people to do, just like together and separately. That's what we are teaching people to do. Yet it sounds big and scary sometimes.
It is scary.
And it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't. And just even some of the most basic concepts of, gosh, how much did you make this last month, right? Or this quarter?
That's right.
And if it's if it's like 17 Hats or QuickBooks or whatever program that you're using, even if it's on a spiral bound notebook to start with, it doesn't matter.
That's right.
Whenever you have an income, jot it down. And then on a regular basis, where am I at? Where are my benchmarks? I wanted to make this many dollars per week or per month. Did I achieve that? Why not?
Exactly. Why not?
Simplify.
Or why? And that's true. It's all about the simplification. Because you can go out and find a list that is a gazillion, gads and gads and gads of pages, gazillions of options of things to track. Well, no company tracks everything that they could be tracking. The thing is, what should we be tracking? And really knowing where we're going helps us understand what should we track.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
relevance.
It is total
relevance.
So I'm going to put relevance on top of that. And I'm like, okay, don't tell me to track how much toilet paper I use, because I don't care.
No, it doesn't.
I don't care what the office is using in toilet paper. I care we have it.
Exactly. And even like with LinkedIn, right? So people can track exactly how many contacts do they have, how many people looked at their profiles this week in comparison to the next. Actually, in the reality, at some point that may have been valid as you're growing your profile and you're wanting to reach a certain number of listeners or followers, but for other components, it may not matter as long as you're making the specific connection you wanted to make. So then you can go, hey, how many specific connections did I make? How many either revenue dollars from those specific connections on LinkedIn, or how many referrals did I get from LinkedIn, or how many connections do I have that I need to reconnect with a simple, hey, how are you doing? Just thought about you, period, next. Something as simple as that.
Notice there's sales, there's marketing, there's thinking, there's leadership. There's all kinds of things that are wrapped into this conversation on purpose. All right, you're watching program 218. This is Effective Systems with our special guest, Ingrid Pyka. Now, we'll be right back after this.
You're listening to The Voice of Bold Business Radio. In every program, we share stories, tips, and concepts that benefit short-term goals and increase confidence in long-term positioning. Stay current and receive programs to continue sparking ideas about growth strategy by subscribing to the program at voiceofboldbusiness.com. Now, back to Jess.
All right. As we were in, this is all about systems. And notice these are like living, breathing systems in addition to what our computers can do for us and how we can automate and what should we be tracking and are we tracking the right things? And if we're not getting the results, is it us or is it our systems or our technology, right? All of those are really good questions. And that said, they're overwhelming. And one of the things that can bring us back to the center of all of the potential overwhelm is to start with something that Ingrid was sharing about earlier. What's your mission? What are your goals? What's your vision here? And how important have you found the vision, mission, and values to actually be when it comes to running a successful business that is growing?
If President Kennedy had not said, we will put a man on the moon, we would not have put a man on the moon. It actually was President Kennedy's speech that spurred on NASA to that directive and to pull all of their resources together to put everything, which meant that they had to create a unit that would allow the individuals on that spaceship, right, to breathe, eat, do things after they eat, be able to communicate.
You're very tactful.
And come back. So there were a lot of pieces on there. How do you create 10 days worth of food that doesn't bog down the unit?
Right.
And the establishment of what is your goal is paramount. If you don't know where you're going, you can't get there. Right. It's as simple as that.
Right.
How do you know where you're going when you don't know where you're going?
Right.
In our phones, to find your home, to find your office, to find your anything, you put the address into your maps, right? And it will take you there. If you just say, hey, smartphone, take me to ... That'd be a long roundabout to go.
I wonder what, I've never tried that. I wonder what our smartphone would say to us. Where is ?
You know what? Let's do that. After we're done, I'm going to test that.
Anytime I make up a place, it takes me to Australia.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
Now I have just admitted that I play with my phone and I see, can I stump? Can I stump on my phone? Well, yes, but it really hasn't been stumped. I just have been unclear. Isn't that an element?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And it may take you somewhere where you do not want to go. It may take you somewhere where you have new ideas, yet it suddenly still comes up with a location.
That's right.
You have to have a location to go, no matter what. In your business, how much revenue do you want to achieve? How many clients do you want to have? What kind of services do you want to provide? Or what products do you want to survey or provide to your clients? Where do you want to have? How big of a restaurant do you want to build? Everything is a specific goal and dream. Documented. Did
you hear that, people?
Remember, the third part of a true system is recording. Recording it and just having it as a documented aspect. So dream boarding, right?
I think there's an element of dream boarding that comes into this. I also think there's an element of just creating a knowledge base at this point. I mean, honestly, we have our individual, where do we want? How do our personal values fit into the values and how we're working together when we go to work every day? And then taking it one step further is, well, is where I think this company is going actually where this company is going? And if I can't ask that question, or I'm shut down when I ask that question, or the answer to that question doesn't exist, well.
And things are different, evolve. Think about the companies that we have here. Think about what we're doing here with this Powercast, right?
Yeah.
Podcast.
I like it. It is a Powercast. That's right.
Power. Boost. Bold. And what would the reality of this have been even just 10 years ago?
Right.
So now we have new opportunities. So let's think what else can happen in our business and how can we evolve it to have a new reach, a new product, new opportunities, opening up from the secrets that you're holding within.
Ooh, did you hear that? You have secrets within you, people. And I have secrets within me, and Ingrid has secrets within her. And, and it's true. We must just stop. We must just pause and allow them to come up with something. I'm reading all kinds of books. A Whack on the Side of the Head. I'm reading, The Founder's Dilemma. I'm reading, again, Joe Wooden's biography. By the way, that's my favorite business book, Joe Wooden's biography. It is not a biography. He was a basketball coach, a college basketball coach, but all the way he lived, the way he showed up, it was all vision-based. It was all mission-based. And he had a code. Right? He had a code. And when we have a code, we know we can show up better.
Right.
We can recognize when somebody is not our code or outside of the code that we have set for ourselves. And we can figure out what, and by the way, so now I'm applying systems to interpersonal relationships, because I think that's part of the effective piece. We haven't even talked about the effective part of systems. We've been talking about systems.
Yeah.
And it's true in the fact that when we know where we stand, we can better understand where somebody else is.
That's
There's
so
an
true.
awareness piece
That's
of that.
true. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it is a way, a system is, since it is an anticipated, since it is a known set of
Yeah.
criteria and
Yeah.
one built on the other,
Yeah.
if one of those is missing in a true system, it has a huge possibility of the entire system crumpling and failing, which is why when we see these disasters occurring, it's because, oh, we didn't know, or this happened, or computers failed, or this glitch was there. Because of a glitch, suddenly all the lights went out, right?
Yes.
One misstep in a system
Yeah.
will bring a crashing result.
People, don't be the reason a system crashes. How's that for advice for today? Well, but at the same point in time, be confident in the decisions that we're making.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're doing that, we probably need to know and have defined what is effective. And so I'm excited. What does effective mean to you?
Effective means it's getting you the results you want. It's
Ooh.
basically, that's all it is giving you the results that you want. And in a team, effective means that all the members of the team are able to collaborate together. They're able to communicate with each other. They understand what their specific roles are in moving the steps of each system forward.
Mm-hmm.
It again, everyone knows where they're supposed to be. It's like a stage, right?
Yes.
You're on the stage and cue goes, curtain goes up. Every player knows where they're supposed to stand. And if one of the actors misses a cue, you can always tell there's maybe a little bit of a pause until they then jump back in.
That's right.
And depends on how bad the cue miss is, could really
Depends
change the outcome
Exactly.
of that performance.
Yeah. Although the movement, the forward movement was the key piece. That's I was going to just say, effectiveness for me is things are moving.
Yep.
Now, if they're moving forward, that's good. If they're not moving forward, they're moving. It's redirection. It's rethink. You have a phrase. What's your phrase? There's no mistakes.
All retakes.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that applies to the constant play, the constant experimentation.
The improv.
Yeah.
It's the improv of life.
Yeah.
And being able, and that's also coming back to the trust factor.
Mm-hmm.
If there is a component of the system, sometimes there are things that we just can't avoid, right?
Yeah.
If one of the key individuals in a particular system is out for some reason and ill, and in comes a client with a complaint, normally that complaint may have been resolved very quickly with someone being able, who is trained and having that conversation and palliating that owner's concern. So having the checks and balances. So if it truly is one of those diagrams, if Y, then Z, then Z, then X and such. But if there's a missing piece, what could still be the safety net?
Right.
In case. And it may not be at every single point in a junction of a system.
Probably not.
It'll be at
there's going to be big milestones.
At least milestones or different components where, hey, if we don't get this, we don't see this happening, time to recheck and go, what's going on.
Yeah. Let's check in with Scott again. All right, Scott, bring us something else from our audience.
Okay, well, Ben asks, you said that small things can make big difference. Is there some easier way to determine which part of our business system doesn't work, especially if it's something small?
That's a really good question, Ben. I wish I knew it's a loaded question, because this would actually spur so many more questions from my end. How about you? I mean, it's like, why, what, which, where, and if there's something small, is it important? I think that's the value too.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Is it an important factor? And I guess the question that I would have to Ben's question, we were talking earlier about the receive and the give.
Yep. In
this circumstance, is it the small system that doesn't seem important? For example, let's just think about something that seems pretty simple, right? When you wash your hands after
Yeah.
after you're using the facilities in a restaurant. It seems like so small. And 100 years ago, that was unheard of. But it's such a big, big piece. The impact has huge ramifications. So looking at it from the early stage of what is a small shift of just washing hands do to prevent many health and wellness disasters, to the other end of the scope, the result, let's say you have just one client. It was, when things go wrong, it's always because there's a whole bunch of things going on. As one person, you misplaced their file. The person who was supposed to get in touch with them was sick.
Yes.
And then it's always
the thing.
this
Yes.
continuum of. So if we were to look at, it's only one client who had this issue, one customer, no one else has ever had this happen before.
Right.
So that might seem small and insignificant. When you look at the details, though, it can unravel a whole myriad of small things that, going backwards, potentially can prevent a big problem from in the future.
Yes.
So I feel that the question is loaded on both ends there.
It is.
Is it a small thing that may seem insignificant in a normal daily routine, or is it a small thing that happened? And now we're spurring back into looking, okay, what was it that caused that? But yeah, they make a big difference and can make a huge difference.
I like that because I also caught the two-sided. There's two ways that this could go. And like you, all I have are more questions.
Yeah.
So here's my question to help you spur more questions, Ben. And that is, potentially sit down, and when you think about this, write the top 25 things down that are causing you distress about this particular system. That's 25 things. Now group them together. You probably have 2 buckets, 3 buckets, maybe 4 buckets. Look at those buckets and your system and see where they intersect, and dive in and see what questions you can ask around those buckets. That would be my way to help you get to the more questions that Ingrid and I both have for you.
And if need be, even assign a points value system to those bucket items. And then you can determine what's very important. And the point system, again, would be twofold.
Yeah.
What is the current value within the business or within the structure of the organization, or if you're an entrepreneur, how important is it to pick up the phone and call one contact? Is it that important? Well, you can assign that point system. And then the second point system, so it'd be like 1 or 10 colon or slash, however you want to do that. And the second one is, what is the potential impact if you were to make this an important part of your business? 1 to 10. So
there.
Yeah, more questions. I would love to delve into, because I think it's a really good question.
Yeah, exactly. So hashtag VBB Radio. Let's keep that particular conversation going. And if those of you who are listening also have questions or comments, it's the perfect time to share, both for Myra and for Ben today. All right. So tell us, Ingrid, what makes it bold to regularly think about and evaluate the systems that you have in place?
Ooh, what a good question. Change. Look for and accept and learn to be excited about change, about what can be out there that can be different and new. How do you set yourself apart from all of your competition? How do you be bold and go where no one has gone before, right? It's because of change and evolving with what's happening in today's society and the demographics that your niche is, in the product that you're providing. It's your way to step ahead and be that cutting edge of anything that you want to be. So accept change and recognize how important and how wonderful it can be to make things easier, faster, more cost effective, and ultimately be more of a gain towards your business.
That's so great. Okay. I want to just do a quick check-in because I have a lot that I want to say and where we could go. I'd rather give the time, though, to our audience. Scott, do we have more audience questions?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because Connor also asked one.
Okay.
So Connor says, now I have to look for it. Just a second, please. I have it in 2 places.
Oh, I know. I've got you on your toes.
Would
today.
you like a new system?
Oh, please. It says, if systems are so defined by communication, are there some matrix specific to measure the differences, the effectiveness of the system? Do you want me to repeat that?
Yes, please.
If systems are also defined by communication, are there some matrix specific to measure the effectiveness of the system?
Okay, so what are the metrics to evaluate the communication side of the system?
Or the effectiveness of the system as a whole, right?
Oh yeah, that's two different questions.
Yeah, I think so here's what I'm understanding, if I may.
Yeah, please go for it.
So communication is important in establishing the system, and that's granted. So how do we measure if a system is effective is how I'm understanding it.
Okay.
Well, again, it goes back to what is the system made of. Originally, we had talked about the 3 components. Is the system, is it realistic? Are you finding that people are unable to uphold and that there are continual fails to the continuity of the system? That would be one metric to establish. The second one, is it relatable or repeatable, so that it's continuing the same thing over and over versus one person's doing it one way, one person's doing another one, so that their expectations, so it almost becomes a habit. And that's where systems actually can be different with personal, one person versus a group. So is it becoming a habit for everyone where it collaboratively comes together? It's truly repeatable. And then lastly, is it a successful system that, even though I said it as recording and recordable, is it one that stands true now as it did in the past? Is it something that we need to reassess? Do we want to review it? And I would recommend that every system is reviewed on a routine basis, whether it be how a machine is functioning and putting data chips together, or whether it is how a wait staff is introducing and taking down a meal in a restaurant. Just routinely reviewing, how's the reception, how is the staff fulfilling with the system that is set in place, how is it being received, and how effective is it?
And I would add, keep talking about your priorities.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that Ingrid has talked about is all about the system once it's in place. And all of those things are impacted by what are the priorities. And if we're not on the same page about what our priorities are, that means the way we look at and assess our system and our communication around the system and the people that are making up the system and how they're communicating together, true or untrue, right?
Right.
Are they the stop or are they the go?
Right.
Are things able to move? So that's everything that you said. And
yeah, and it actually loops back to Ben's question, right?
Yeah.
What about the little things? Is it important or not?
Exactly.
And I think you had a good point there.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Thank you. All right. Show notes are going to be found at voiceofboldbusiness.com/P217. That is voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 217. You heard it here. You heard Ingrid. You're listening. You're watching. So pause, rate. Wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching, rate us. Give us a 5-star. Give us a 4-star. If you're giving us anything less than that, tell us why. #VBB Radio. And keep this conversation going. Because when you email radio at Red Direction, when you use #VBB Radio, you keep the conversation going. You, me, Ingrid, all of us together define what effective leadership is and how we're doing our business. So let's keep it that way. And on that, consider, what are your most effective systems?
The Voice of Bold Business Radio gives you insights about how to achieve your company's growth strategy. Use #VBB Radio or email us at radio@reddirection.com to ask questions and share your experiences. Add your voice to the conversation. Together, we define what being an effective leader means today. Special thanks to the Scott Treatment for technical production. Thank you for joining us.